שמש דקה ומוות בכנפיה.
Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, should I not seek rest for you, which will do good for you?" Now, is Boaz not our relative, the Boaz with whose young women you were? See, look, behold, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. It's interesting that this whole text, it's not a threshing floor, it is one specific threshing floor, and maybe it was a huge place like this here, and the whole of the town of Bethlehem, they had one threshing floor together, where they were meeting. And well, what do you do at a threshing floor? It's the place to thresh grain. In biblical thinking, the threshing floor is the place of origin of the staple food grain. It's the very basis of an existence. Like the wine press for the wine and sheep, if you talk about sheep, you think about wool and meat. The term threshing floor thus stands for grain, fruit, harvest, for a food basis, and ultimately for assets, for wealth. It is something positive, something desirable that you only leave to someone who is trustworthy. And it's the origin where you get something to bless another person with. So it is very, very logical that Naomi, looking for a rest for her daughter-in-law, sends her to the threshing floor in search for peace, quiet, and maybe a husband, a home. It is equally logical that the enemies of Israel, if they wanted to harm the people of God, they robbed the threshing floors of the Israelites. The threshing floor is a place of origin of blessing, and therefore very, very often associated with a joyful celebration. The Israelites were to tithe from the produce of the threshing floor and bring an offering, as they do up until today, a first fruit offering of the dough when they bake bread. It is very clear that this yield of the threshing floor cannot be produced by man, but is always a gift from God. And therefore, in principle, God is the one who acts on the threshing floor. In many cases, if you go throughout the Bible and just look up the word for threshing floor, you will see that it is also a place of judgment. A place where things are crushed, smashed, and spoiled. A place for the judging and executing action of God. The threshing floor is a place of decision. Just think if there is winnowing and they separate the wheat from the chaff, and the one thing you use and you really look for and the other thing you throw away, or it's cheap. In any case, the threshing floor is a place where God meets, where God appears, reveals himself to people, where God speaks, a place of, if God meets people, they see themselves in his light. So it's a place of recognition of sin, repentance, and penance. A place where people want to bring sacrifice. It's a place of reconciliation with God, a place of grace, and where God listens to, hears, and answers prayers. It's not a coincidence that the King David recognizes the threshing floor of Araunah, the Jebusite, as the place on which the sanctuary is to be built according to God's will. If the living God refers to Israel through the prophet Isaiah as Ben Gorni, as the son of my threshing floor, then this means that God judges his people, yes. But foremost, that God has chosen his people and that God has a future for his people Israel. It means that he expects fruit from his people and that God uses the nation of Israel, whom he has chosen and whom he calls the son of my threshing floor, that God uses this nation to speak through them to the nations of the earth, and that he judges the peoples of the earth, and that he uses this son of the threshing floor as a standard for his judgment. The goal of all of God's work on the threshing floor, that means with the people of Israel, is just like all the goal of every work, of every activity on the threshing floor, is fruit, is yield, is wealth, is prosperity, well-being. If I want to include all these thoughts into one Hebrew word, then the goal of all the work on the threshing floor is shalom.